And that includes my specific request, other than, since next week is spring break, in order not to burden the people who are sort of the innocents in all of this, whether it be at the charters or the Warlock School District, I think it would be considerate of us if we didn't have to have them have that information to us until the 29th, which would give them a couple of days after spring break. I think that that may require a vote of the board, but I think that it's only right not to burden them with data collection that may not be right at their fingertips.
Okay. So, excuse me, I think, do you have questions, Mike?
I was just gonna offer comment on the 29th, the date of the 29th. That is actually gonna be the deadline date that is already talked about being established, so it would not require a vote of the board.
Okay, does that finish your questions, Ms. Hook?
Yes, ma'am, and before we adjourn, I have another matter I would like to bring before the board, but it's my understanding from legal that it would require a 2/3 vote by the board in order to consider it.
Okay, so I'll come back to you after I finish the questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dr. Barr.
Yeah, thank you. My first question, which kind of extends areas that we have already been listed, but the first question relates to Estem and Lisa, and whether it is possible to get information on the size of the current waiting list at those schools, at each school, how often the list is purged and corrected for any folks who may no longer be truly waiting, and the reasons for how they make determinations on purging if that does take place. If possible, information on whether there are duplications in these students on the waiting list, if they're actually at multiple on waiting lists at multiple schools, and really anything that would provide insight into how many folks are really still looking at these schools as an option. I think I also do have questions about the demography of students on the list, but I think that's right, cover that. The second area relates to information on the flow of students from the four-star charter centers, so this would apply to all. That is, what do we know about which students are retained by the schools, where the students who are not retained go after leaving the charter, and what we know about the demographics and achievement levels of those students who leave, and how they compare with those who are retained. I know some of that may not be possible, but whatever information we can get, both about the demography as well as achievement levels of students who stay and those who leave. And then finally, to pick up on the Chamber's initial question, in addition to information about any loss of funds to the LRSD from the Q Charter expansion proposal, I would have interest in the LRSD's take on a plan of action to deal with a loss of funding, including the possibility of collaboration between all existing charters in the south of the river and the LRSD.
Okay. So, Dr. Barker, just finish your questions completely, up until this point?
Excuse me, I think you're...
Are you finished?
I am.
Okay, thank you. Sharice Dean.
I believe most of my questions were addressed on previous questions. I just had one little curiosity for, I think it was Estem. I'm curious about the high school that will be on ULR campus. I'm curious about the division of the grades, the security, and the parking that will be available as far as parking for students 11th and 12th grade, and how they navigate for drop-off and things of that sort. And that concludes my question.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions relative to what we talked about so far? Okay, from what I understand, Ms. Clay, you can clear me up if I'm not correct. At this point, we have a matter yet to be determined by Ms. Zook. And also, we have the individuals that have signed up for public comment. And as I understand the rules, there has to be, I don't know what Ms. Zook's question is, but relative to her question, when she asked it, there will, and the opportunity for folks to speak, there will have to be a motion, a second and 2/3 vote by the board. Is that correct? To go any further than what we've listed on the agenda so far.
Okay, I think there's two separate questions there. The one is whether to allow public comment on the agenda item that is in process now, which is the discussion of additional information. That would require a majority vote to allow public comment. If Ms. Zook's question is to add an additional agenda item to the agenda, then that would take a 2/3 vote in order to get that item on today's agenda.
Okay, and I think we'll start with Ms. Zook. Your question, Ms. Zook?
Yes, I was wondering, I have done a lot of study and visiting with the people from Emoton, and I would like for that to come to a vote, whether or not we are still wanting to review them. I don't know about others if you've had time to study it, but I would, after I've studied and visited with the people involved in that school, then I no longer have any reservations about it, and have no need to review it.
Is there any comment by board members, starting with Ms. Chambers?
No question. Not this time.
Mr. Black?
No questions.
Mr. Williamson?
No questions. I agree with Ms. Zook.
Ms. Savers?
No question.
Ms. Wright?
No question.
Dr. Barr?
No real questions, but still do continue to have some concerns about the sustainability of that school long term, but no questions.
So is your, Mr. Williamson said he agreed with Ms. Zook, then that would lead me to conclude that you would like for it to be the April review, or do we want to discuss that before we, a possible motion? Ms. Wright?
I would recommend, if there is a motion to add the item to the agenda, addressing that first, and then there can be discussion on any possible motion on the added agenda item, should that item be added.
Ms. Lee, do you have anything to add?
No, other than, since it is a charter, is to address Dr. Bart's, point, since it is a charter, we can call them in at any time, whether it is with like a year or 2 years or 3. I think 3 was the vote of the charter panel. But because we can do that, I think that I feel comfortable moving that we add this to the agenda today.
Okay, the question was to Ms. Dean. If she had any further questions. Ms. Dean, do you have any question?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No problem. Ms. Dean, you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. Then the consideration is, well, we don't have a motion. So what is the pleasure of the board regarding this matter of enrolling in charter school?